to my presentation on the need for Oracy in the age of AI. My name's Cathy Jones and I'm an assessment development specialist working at Language Cert. I've been developing Language Cert Academic, which is a test of English language proficiency for HE admissions. Just to sort of set the scene a little bit, I want to make the point that education is about partnership. It's a partnership of trust, responsibility, and importantly, dignity. Examinations and this whole ecosystem in which we're working in assessment is built on trust. Trust that the exam is doing what it's going to do, that it's fair, reliable for all stakeholders. And I'm going to argue that the growing use of AI or misuse of AI is antithetical to this trust. So, what is the situation in this post-pandemic world? During the pandemic, there was a need for take-home assessments, for assessments that could be taken, high-stakes assessments that could be taken at home. When I'm talking about AI, I'm talking about large language model, generative artificial intelligence. I'm not talking about the type of AI that recognises whether the student is the right student taking the test. I'm talking about the type of AI that students may use or misuse to complete these take-home assessments. It's a universal problem, but it does vary from country to country, institution to institution, and faculty to faculty. So the situation in New Zealand and across institutions and faculties in New Zealand may differ, but they may be experiencing the same kind of issue. What are the issues? This use of AI, right, is time consuming to detect. It takes a lot of resource to detect this misuse of AI. And even if it's detected, it's even more difficult, time consuming and problematical to prove. It undermines trust. I said at the start, education is about this partnership of trust. The whole ecosystem is built on trust. And if we cannot trust that the student has gone through the process that we are expecting them to have been through, that trust is undermined. And it undermines the purpose of education, ultimately, sadly, resulting in missed opportunities for students. So what are the other issues that make this such a problem? When students go to university, working in their chosen subject area, they need to work that subject area out for themselves by attending lectures, seminars, discussions, reading. They need to be able to write and verbalise that knowledge and understanding. Writing isn't easy, okay? Writing in your first language isn't necessarily easy. Writing in your second, third, or sometimes even fourth language really isn't easy. Add in the fact that students are often writing under pressure. They're under all sorts of different pressures to perform. They may be under academic pressures if they feel they're struggling. They may be under financial pressures because they're feeling, there's been a lot of investment in this opportunity for them to study in an English medium institution. They want to do well. And there are emotional pressures too, and perhaps a combination of all three. So writing under that kind of pressure, you can see how AI and just putting your task title into ChatGPT and eliciting something, you can see how that might be perceived as an easy way out. Asking that ChatGPT to kind of verbalize that knowledge and understanding. But the truth is, AI can't do this for them because it's all about the process of writing. It's if you aren't writing, you aren't thinking. And if you aren't thinking, you aren't learning. And that's what university is all about. The horrible truth is that AI knows nothing, teaches nothing, and gives students nothing of worth. So in terms of thinking about what our guardrails might be for this is where I'm positioning Oracy as a vehicle or a catalyst to develop critical thinking that's required to be able to use this tool for the better. Having said that, what does it offer? What does AI offer? Its developers claim it provides the answer to any question. Put any question in. I argue this is quite far from the truth. What AI does give us is a response, for sure. It gives us an answer, but quite possibly not the answer. And that's because AI has no knowledge. Intelligence is actually a bit of a misnomer. It doesn't have experience. Can't tell right from wrong or truth from fiction. It's based on algorithms and probability. Essentially, an exercise in form. You may have heard the term internet slop, which is being used increasingly to kind of describe the output of large language models. And it's really important to remember that these are not coming from a place of any knowledge or any creativity, both essentially human characteristics. Yeah, it can put together grammatically correct sentences that read quite naturally, quite good. It can build sentences, but it's not constructing meaning. And by meaning, I mean deeper meaning, reflective of some kind of thought process. You often find when you ask it a question, its starting point will be to give you a list of bullet points, short, snippy summaries of concepts and themes, factoids that may or may not be complete nonsense. It doesn't have what the wonderful linguist Steven Pinker describes as arcs of coherence. So that is the artistry of good text, carefully structured, the linkage to and from, the telling of a narrative from a human perspective of experience. It's full of hyperbolic adjectives and superlative modifiers, but what are they actually signifying? They're not coming from a place of kind of personal expression. It's just very over-the-top language. And I quite like this term, internet slop, as being a good way to describe it. And as an example of this kind of searching for meaning, but always search for meaning, you can ask it anything. Okay, so just as a little experiment, I thought of an meaningless, absurd expression. And I said, a trifle of stacked plates. Meaning? And this is what it came back with. It told me, this is a lovely and evocative phrase. A trifle of stacked plates suggests a few different but related ideas. It can imply a small quantity, a trifle, a small amount. So a trifle of plates likely means a small number of plates piled on top of each other, not a huge imposing stack. Neatness and order, delicacy or lightness. And, in summary, it says, in essence, a trifle of stacked plates paints a picture of a small, neat or delicate or simple pile of plates. So it's looking for meaning. It's presenting this back to us as though this is, in fact, a lovely, well-known and evocative phrase, but it isn't. It doesn't mean anything. And another one. Try another phrase. A remembered analogy of forgotten metaphors. It's basically like word salad, yeah, just putting stuff in to see what it can do. A remembered analogy of forgotten metaphors. Meaning? Again, I get some praise. That's a beautifully paradoxical and thought-provoking phrase. Let's break it down. And it goes on to give me this kind of pseudo explanation for what that phrase means. It doesn't say this is not a common phrase in English, okay? What it's giving me is a sort of pseudo explanation. It's looking for meaning where in fact there isn't any. So where are we? The AI genie is out of the bottle. It's here to stay. So given that, what are the skills that we need to nurture? And as test developers, how can we promote these by definition, including a skill or an aptitude in a test is by definition promoting it somehow. Students want to pass the test, they're going to practice the kind of things that are in that test, in that form. So what are the things as test developers we can do to foster, nurture the kind of skills that are going to enable students to survive, thrive and flourish in this world of AI? Okay, I heard this really good thing, which was like, they say that if you're using AI to produce your written assignments, it's a bit like taking a forklift truck to the gym to lift your weights. It's not about the outcome, okay? It's about the thought and the process of constructing that written response. So I say we need to start thinking about what we can do to complement written assessments. This is to stand alongside written assessment as a fundamental in academic study. But what else can we do to nurture the kind of skills that are going to help students? And I think that for me, there's a very strong case emerging to do something, revive the viva. And by viva, I mean a kind of spoken oral defense of a written argument, okay? And I see a very clear need for oracy. What is oracy? Referred to as the fourth R of education. I turned to the Oracy Education Commission in the UK. They do a lot of work in relation to primary education, and this has been a big movement in primary education. But why would it stop? Why would we stop promoting oracy after primary? I think that it's equally as essential in higher education and in English language education as it is in primary. Okay, the primary is a good starting point, and we as educators can build on that. So the Oracy Education Commission defines oracy as articulating ideas, developing understanding, and engaging with others through speaking, listening, and communication. Okay. Jeff Barton, who is the chair of the Oracy Education Commission, gave this really passionate speech where he said, parents want it, the economy demands it, democracy needs it, teachers welcome it, and our children deserve it. The time for oracy for every child is now. And I suggest the time for oracy for every student is now. Okay. So going back to ChatGPT, I thought I'd ask ChatGPT for a definition of oracy. We've heard what the Oracy Education Commission say. Unlike the trifle of stacked plates, I thought it came back with something fairly sensible here. Oracy is the ability to express oneself fluently and effectively in spoken language, encompassing speaking and listening skills. Pretty good. Then we went on. ChatGPT, why is oracy important? Leading question. And this is what I got back. Again, I didn't think too bad. We're not in the trifle of stacked plates territory yet. Oracy is important because it enhances communication, agree, critical thinking, agree, and social interaction, enabling effective participation in personal, academic, and professional contexts. For me, in terms of the test construct we have developed for Language Cert Academic, this is bang on. Okay, so far so good. Why is oracy important to HE? Slightly more nuanced question for ChatGPT to grapple with here. But yeah, oracy is crucial in higher education as it fosters academic discussion, collaboration, and the ability to articulate ideas clearly, preparing students for professional and societal engagement. There isn't much in there with which I disagree. Don't know how you feel about it in the audience, but so far for me, these definitions are okay, and it's working for me to use this. I'm able to critically look at what I'm seeing, and I'm quite comfortable with it. Then if you try and lead the algorithm in the other way with a kind of a question that's framed in a slightly different way, ChatGPT, why isn't oracy important anymore? And of course, the system is inclined to agree with me. It says it may seem less emphasized today due to the rise of digital communication, self-paced learning and a focus on written and technical skills over verbal interaction in some contexts. And for me, this is where I start to see things fragmenting up a little bit. This is straying a little bit more into the kind of word salad territory, searching for meaning. It's searching to answer my question about why Oracy isn't important anymore. And it's chucked in some things, digital communication, very generic, loose, non-specific, self-paced learning, again, not that specific, and a focus on written and technical skills. In some contexts, it's all quite vague, okay? And you need to have a kind of critical mind to be able to look at this and go, what does this actually mean? Okay, so what can we do? We've got this tool, but in order to use it, there are certain skills that we need to cultivate in students to enable them to approach this kind of output, the internet slop, with some criticality. So I thought I'd take a second to just go through some of the features of the Language Cert Academic test to show how those are kind of embedded in the test we've developed. So let's take a look at how Oracy skills are embedded in the Language Cert Academic test, starting off by looking at the listening. In Language Cert Academic, I think it's important to sort of note that in defining what it is that we want to test, we've taken a really expansive view of what students actually need to do when they get to university. And we have a number of different domains featuring in our definition of academic English. And so that can comprise everything from interacting with your fellow students, with flatmates, right through to interactions with the dean of your university or tutors in a seminar. And those include a range of different registers and levels of formality. Okay, you need to be able to use the right tone with the right person. You need to be able to discern the right tone. So in our listening, we include representation from a range of all these different scenarios, all in an academic context, but across a breadth of different types of experience that the student may have when they're at university, as well as different levels of formality. We also include a range of accents, representative of all the places where English language is spoken, and a group discussion task. So the last part does include a 3-speaker task where you're listening to 3 different speakers, co-constructing meaning, positioning their argument, defending their own argument, and in hearing these extracts in a receptive way, that is obviously going to inform and help students understand what it is that they're going to be doing in a productive sense in the speaking test. The speaking test for Language Cert Academic, again, a four-part test conducted by a human interlocutor, and it includes an overall mark for task fulfillment and communicative effect awarded by the interlocutor, okay, and double weighted. This puts communication, so essentially, the main function of Oracy, at the very heart of the test, and double weights it. Okay, and we look for a range of speaking skills, again, in that representative range of academic contexts that come into our definition of what a student needs to do when they're at university. The last 2 tasks that students engage in, candidates engage in, they are asked follow-up questions by that human examiner, who by that point in the test has managed to gauge a fairly good idea of where that candidate is at in terms of their ability and their confidence. And in a very human, supportive, communicative way, they're able to use their degree of autonomy within that interlocutor framework to just elicit that little bit more from the student, to probe slightly, to test that they've understood their argument, to really zoom in on that kind of critical thinking and to really understand, can you defend your argument? Can you extend it? Can you counter your own argument? And if you think about it, all of those skills are going to be exactly the kind of skills that will be essential for a Viva type support to written assessment. So if we are moving in this way towards an oral defence of your written work, and using Oracy as a way to really build critical thinking skills, this is a lovely vehicle to promote practice of those kind of skills, and all conducted by a human. So you've got this kind of one-to-one communication at the very heart of it. So I love this cartoon. We used it. It became kind of synonymous for my dad's kind of very literal mentality in my family. But I think it really kind of exemplifies why we need these critical thinking skills. We saw the internet slop, right? And we can't take that all at face value. If we're going to use into the artificial Gen AI as a tool to write, to help us inform our content, we need to take a very critical view to be able to identify the slop, to question what we call those hallucinations, fake references, fake court cases, kind of imagined content that is actually a feature of generative AI. And we need to, we need to be able to not take such a literal view and be spoon-fed. And I love this Far Side cartoon. I guess that says health. So the old rescue guy is going to go. Part of the definition of what test takers need to do when they get to university, I spent a long time thinking about the wider extra linguistic, if you like, transferable skills. And again, back to it, sort of everything starts with children for me, but back to UNICEF, who created this fabulous framework of transferable skills. They're often called soft skills, which is a term I hate because I think these are actually the skills that make us human. I would be more inclined to call them something like skills for humanity, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. I've also heard them called power skills. 21st century skills you may have heard of, but that seems a bit like out of date, given we're kind of a quarter of the way through the 21st century already. But if you look at these categories of transferable skills, you've got cognitive skills. So that's our ability to problem solve, make informed choices, set plans and goals. And Oracy skills are going to support that. Social skills, interaction, communication, collaboration, conflict resolution, and negotiation. These are all skills that are going to be wholly supported by having good Oracy skills. And similarly, emotional skills, coping with stress, understanding your own emotions as well as the emotions of others, and the ability to empathize. This is all stuff that we can do through spoken language, spoken communication. UNICEF referred to them in their report as the magic glue. They don't exist in isolation. So whatever discipline which you're studying, you need some of this glue, the transferable skills, to be able to survive, thrive, and flourish in what you want to do. And I see, there's a great benefit in taking this kind of approach. And for me, working in assessment, this is where it gets quite interesting because thinking about the construct, and do you remember I said in assessment, by choosing to assess something, you are by definition kind of promoting it, kind of familiarizing people with it, raising its profile. So if you're going to do that, I want to do that at the point which is going to add most value for the learners taking the test. If you're going to prepare something, let's prepare something that is going to be part of your toolkit. Yeah. And the way I kind of envisaged this was thinking about what are those three big domains that you're going to come up, going to be sort of moving between when you're at university. And that's the academic domain. You're also thinking about your professional domain, that, one of the main reasons now for going to university is careers, right? And also personal well-being. And there are some shared transferable skills that sit at that intersection. And many of these are kind of supported and enabled by strong Oracy skills. So to kind of summarise the benefits, if you like, of Oracy, to sort of really sort of ram it home in this presentation, I think just to go over these: academic success, increased Oracy skills improves learner retention and learning. It supports literacy, promotes collaborative learning. You can talk to your peers, you can work in a group, boosts critical thinking. This happens in real time, okay? When you're listening to me now presenting, you're evaluating what I'm saying. You're not just asking AI to listen to me and then give you the points you maybe wish that you were, but it's boosting your critical thinking, okay? Improves your confidence, helps develop those social skills, including empathy, fosters creativity. People with good Oracy skills have really good professional advantages. So in terms of like how you kind of interact in the workplace, if you want to sort of take a kind of leadership path and career advancement. It promotes inclusion and engenders respectful dialogue, enables you to express yourself emotionally. If you think about it, for students starting university, for many students, the only access that they'll have to kind of mental health support services would be through English. So you're going to need to be able to articulate how you're feeling just to be able to access some of those really important services for our young people at university. In terms of Oracy, to using Oracy, promoting Oracy skills as a way to counter concerns around academic integrity, yeah, reinstating oral examination is resource heavy, okay, but arguably so is investigating the misconduct. And I kind of see this as sort of taking preemptive action over retrospective penalty. And investigating misconduct is super stressful for the students concerned, for the staff having to put those kind of procedures and go through the processes for proving misconduct. It's stressful and it kind of lacks dignity. Whereas being asked to give an oral defence has all these wider benefits for the students. And I'd say the benefits that are across education, across personal development, and they're there for professional life. For me, it's an absolute no-brainer to promote Oracy in the age of AI. And last of all, I wanted to just kind of situate all of this within the context of something that I've only discovered the kind of theory of radical kindness quite recently, but it's something that is having a big impact on how I think about our practice as educationalists, and for me as an assessment developer. And I heard at a conference recently in the UK, Dr. Jenna Mittelmeier, who has some really interesting work around this area of radical kindness. She described it as caring for the souls of one another in our practice. And I was thinking about this in terms of assessment development, and it's kind of helped me to see what I'm doing in a new context. And the key points I wanted to be able to kind of share with you to finish today are that it's really important that when we're talking about Oracy skills and fostering critical thinking and enhancing, nurturing problem solving, this isn't bestowing these wonderful skills on a group who are lacking in some way, okay? We're not seeing those students as being in deficit. This is nurturing what I think language learners already have. This is coming from the point of view of acknowledging the linguistic knowledge and transferable skills that language learners bring, okay? But as a test, first and foremost, of English language proficiency, it's surfacing the right linguistic repertoire, the right grammatical skills, the right vocabulary to be able to access those skills. Okay, and it's not framing this in any way as a critique of international students. I talked at the beginning about that complex, the complex range of reasons that might mean that an international student just doesn't feel they have recourse to anything other than just putting the question in AI. The financial pressure, the emotional pressure, the personal pressure to succeed. We need to think about what those scenarios are and how we can kind of investigate what's going on there in terms of those pressures. This is also important when we're talking about Oracy, that all voices must be valued equally. This isn't about imposing a kind of norm. I'm from Cambridge, a kind of Cambridge English norm that everyone's going to be assessed against. This is about valuing all voices, authentic voices, regardless of linguistic background, and fostering confidence and pride. So students are able to communicate and express themselves in their authentic voice, and really celebrating that reciprocal value that international students bring. Education is about empathy. It's not about being othered. The value that international students bring is immeasurable to the domestic students, and vice versa. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to go and study in an English language, in an English speaking institution or an English speaking country. But what that body of international students bring to the home students is equally magnificent. And it's about intercultural competence, how we learn from each other. And we can do that with increased communication skills. And radical kindness, it sounds kind of saccharine sweet, and I don't want to kind of position it like that. Radical kindness, I think, is a kind of revolution. I'm thinking of it as a revolution. It's about respecting one another's humanity and being seen and treated as human. And that's something that AI will never be able to do. Very recently, this popped up in something I was reading, a 45-year-old IBM principal, and I thought, yeah, this is still pretty relevant today. A computer can never be held accountable. If you think about that, so that is something, isn't it? So as humans, we are accountable for our output. The output that is coming from that internet slop, it's not, ChatGPT isn't accountable for it. It does have guardrails in place, obviously, but we, as the humans, in touch with our own humanity, we are accountable. Okay, and if we don't, this may be the kind of direction we're going in. So a little bit like talking to my kids actually at the moment, but I love this cartoon. You're right if I use ChatGPT for this conversation. So I wanted to end with that. Thanks ever so much for listening. I've gone over a little bit, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And do get in touch with me if you've got any questions, feedback, anything you'd like to say to keep this dialogue going. And that's the code for my LinkedIn, and I've put my email there as well. So many thanks.